Welcome everybody to this Faculty Showcase webinar. We've got 5 faculty who are going to be sharing with us their experiences of going remote. And the first question I'm going to ask them, I'll just ask them all to introduce themselves real quick. So I don't want to, I'm not going to go in alphabetical order because that will confuse me even more. So let's just go Mona, Ahmed, Lubna, Wafi, and Matthew. That's the way I see you. So Mona, go ahead.
Mona Amir, Associate Professor of Psychology.
Ahmed Tolba, Associate Provost and Associate Professor of Marketing Business School.
Lubna Murad, Adjunct Professor at the Core Department.
Wafi Lutfallah, I'm a Professor of Mathematics.
Matthew Hendershot, Associate Dean in Academy of Liberal Arts.
Okay, thank you all for joining us. And thanks to everyone else who's joined us to listen in and contribute as well. So Mona, I'll start with you. Can you tell us 1 or 2 things that you're doing successfully in your classes that are maybe different than what you think most people are doing as well?
Well, it's only one class actually, since I'm the department chair and I have another course release. So it's one class. It is a graduate class. I think what has been challenging is that it's a class that usually builds on a lot of stories and activities and videos and to illustrate the material, because it's very dense and very difficult theoretical understandings of how people interact and how psychotherapy works. A couple of things that I was very happy that it worked out are one thing is that we have a lot of videos that show examples of the psychotherapy processes, and it's really difficult to understand the material without seeing that, but they're not available online. So discovering that we can show it through Zoom and have Zoom pick up the sound on my computer while I'm, playing it on my laptop. And also at the same time, I created a WhatsApp group so that, because I can't just, continuously stop the video and discuss the methodology or what's happening and get them to like critically analyze what's going on, because, you stop the video, you play it again, it causes a lot of problems with the internet. So what we're doing is that we'll play the video out, and then while we're doing that, it's like, you know how you have like somebody watching a sports game and giving like a running commentary of what's happening? So we'll be like putting running commentaries of like, I noticed this, or he's saying it for this reason, or this is the emotion that's coming up. So it's kind of a way to, and it's interesting because it actually works out just as well, if not better, than the way we normally do it in class of showing a bit, stopping, discussing.
So are they doing the running commentary in the chat or in a Google Doc? Because orally would be difficult.
So we're doing it on the WhatsApp group,
right?
At the same time that we're watching,
That's really cool.
online, and so far they can all hear the video, and they're in different governorates as well. The class is spread out across Egypt, so. But it seems to be working. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is that because we missed some classes, and a lot of the material is again very dense and a lot of theory, but applied theory, I created like online videos for them to watch with the material. Of course, I had to come up with lots of examples in the video, but I wanted to make sure they were paying attention. So I think I really had a lot of fun is that within the video I created quizzes, and I would stop and say, okay, press pause on don't continue listening, you have to come up with the answer, don't continue. And I'll keep saying that to force them to, hoping that they will listen and not just listen, continue, but they will actually pause, answer the questions or the quiz. And it's usually like on the slides quiz, and then using all these like highlighting tools and all these other kinds of markers or whatever to show up in the video to select the correct answer, and then continuing on with the rest of the video. So this is all new things that I've never done before, and it was a lot of fun, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, Yamuna, for sharing both of these. Yeah, I think a lot of people can benefit from those experiences. And the part about sharing the video is that you have to click something that allows it to share the computer audio, because it doesn't do that by default in Zoom. So it's just that trick that some people don't see. And the part about pausing to ask questions is really good, because that simulates what you would normally do in a class. So just, trying to make it work is a good idea.
Yeah. All right. And the students said they felt guilty because they said Are you watching us? How do you know that we're not answering the questions? How do you know that we're not guessing it? So
Yeah.
it did.
Tell them you guys are predictable.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Yamuna. Ahmed, can you tell us some of the things you're doing in your classes?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's really exciting for me. I think this is a great experience because it's far better than what I expected. So I actually look at this online experience as a very positive one, in my view. So I'll share with you a couple of quick points that are not very far from what Mona said, but maybe with the context of business that has had different challenges, maybe less challenge when it comes to depth of theory, but more challenge when it comes to interaction and solving cases together. So what I did is first of all, my classes are more than 30 students. So this is quite challenging. Both are undergrads, and it's quite challenging to have 30 plus engaged together. So I started by doing the Panopto videos, which worked well. And then I was eager to do the Zoom, and I was asking about the synchronous from the very first day, but I followed the instructions of the CLT at the time. And then once we found that Zoom may work, so I started to do the Zoom. And then the feedback after the first week, I got some said this is too much to have both, and some said this is the best thing that we have both. So I decided to keep both, but one of the main important things was communication. So I kept communicating with the students in a very specific manner, saying that this is for you, this Panopto is going to be useful, but you don't have to watch it beforehand. If you watch it, it would be better, stuff like this. I tried to balance it out. It was quite challenging to do that, but I thought it was very effective to have both. And for me, Panopto was not a problem, the beginning only, but after that, it's just a rehearsal before I start talking about it in the lecture. The key points that I want to mention about the classes, I focus on the Zoom. In the Zoom, the first thing is I like to, the concept, the idea of sharing screens. So when I have case studies, I used to bring the case studies on Excel. Maybe I refer to a PowerPoint that I had at Panopto, but I share my screen, and I give the students also the option to share their screens, and we solve cases together. So this gives a lot of possibility for them to interact more, to the extent that I had comments from several students saying that I learned better using the online tool than face-to-face, which is something striking to me, but I thought it was very good. So sharing the screens and giving them the option to interact, that would be good. The second thing is using raised hands is really good because people are not interrupting each other or talking while the others are listening. So I always stick to raising the hands and sometimes maybe giving some options of answers in the chat. This allows people who wanted to express themselves to express more. So I think this has increased the interaction further. Based on my experience in that. I record the Zoom as well. So I give them the Panopto, I give them the recorded Zoom. And of course, since I recorded Zoom, and since I have a class at 8:30, so the attendance, and since the credit F as well, so the attendance slightly dropped. But I always figured out that most of them watch or listen to the Zoom recording, which is fine. But that's one of the issues I faced. The last thing I want to share with you is something I plan to do. I got trained on with the CLT, which is the breakout rooms. So I'm planning to do a negotiation exercise with the students in a couple of weeks. And I plan to divide them into the breakout rooms, and then have the TAs with me, and then they work on something, get some information the others don't have, and start negotiating. So I plan to do that. I thought this was brilliant as well, and very good. We used to make a lot of sound and noise when we used to do it face-to-face. Now I think it's going to be more effective. So the bottom line is, I think the tools are very effective. Apart the internet at night, which what Lubna mentioned, I think this is the only little thing, but I think it went very well. I think the Zoom was very effective, and the fact that we have the option of recording also give the option for students who did not attend because they had a problem, that they can also listen. This is something very valuable as well. So I want to stop here, and then we can discuss further afterwards.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. And I love the way you're doing the flexibility thing with the students as well, because that's really important to understand that someone might learn differently or might have different circumstances that makes them not able to attend. And then that point about the internet at night reminds me of something else. You know, when we send students something to do before class, better to send it earlier in the day so that they have enough time to watch it or whatever in case the internet at home is slow, or there are several people at home who have to do the same thing. Like there are 3 people learning and they're getting their videos at 6 p.m. and they all have to watch them. Plus the Netflix that they have to watch, of course. Okay, Lubna.
I want to add, if I may, I want to add one more point that was very positive, which is the Zoom meetings. I think we used to have a problem having all the team members come to the office to attend to discuss projects, but now the Zoom meetings are far easier. But of course,
nobody's stuck in traffic.
But my day starts at 8:30 in the morning and finishes a last meeting maybe at 10 or 11 p.m. So it's crazy.
Yeah. We need to take care of ourselves too, because yeah, I haven't had a break. I only had a break this last weekend, but other than that, it's been really.
Well, I have 4 meetings on Friday and Saturday with students now. So, but I think it saves time. I mean, it's reorganizing some of the time that we used to have, but it's in a more efficient manner and allows for maximum interaction versus meeting one student representing the whole group. Usually this led to better value for the students, if I may.
And also what you were saying about sharing the screen and them learning more is I think probably everyone has an opportunity to contribute when you're online a little bit more than face-to-face. Okay, Lubna, your turn.
Okay, so I'm teaching scientific thinking, one section, and to my luck, I'm teaching a biology lab. So yes, so the scientific thinking, of course, there were challenges at the beginning, like everyone. However, the lab was extremely challenging because and it's an introductory for non-science majors, so they don't even have that solid background in biology. So they were really freaking out. How are we going to do the stuff? How do we answer the questions, so on and so forth. So first for the lab, this is what we did, is that it's a multi-sectional course. So more than one professor is teaching the same lab. So what we did is that me and another professor, we would go to campus every 2 weeks, record like a couple of labs, and like do the demonstration, give the introduction, everything on Panopto, and do like a supplementary material PDF and send it to the students. And usually they would do the report in the lab and hand it in by the end of the lab. But for the sake of the circumstances, we would just give them an entire week. So our 5 days, like I would assign it on Sunday, give it to them, and have the deadline by Thursday night. So this is what we did for the lab. Of course, I would still get a lot of questions. I don't have background in biology. I don't understand. This is too hard. And even in the evaluation, they would say that it's not an efficient method. We don't know what to do. So in order to help them further, I would, like in the middle of the week, like it would be due on Thursday. On Tuesday, I would have like a Zoom meeting. I wouldn't call it like a meeting. It would be like office hours. I would be available for that hour for whoever has a question. They can come on and ask me and go over it together, so they would be able to answer. So this is how we got, and actually as we have progress, like I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, we had the evaluation for the 4th week. And I can see a major difference in the lab evaluation compared to the first week. The first week, they were really frustrated. And like yesterday, the evaluation I saw was everyone was like, it's going so smooth and everything, and I'm learning, so on and so forth. So it was a bit of a shock at the beginning for the lab. As for scientific, the challenge was, like Dr. Mona mentioned, my course is also based on student interaction, discussions, debates, activities in class. I would rarely lecture in class. It's all activity and discussion based. So this was like really, I was freaking out. Like how am I gonna do the course? Because I don't really have any content that I can teach online or record sessions, so on and so forth. So we managed, thank God, with the help of Fadi Moros, he brought the thing together, and we kept talking about it. So now I give them a lot of case studies. So we were case study based even from the beginning, but now we rely on them much more. We're not doing all the in-class activities that needed the group work and the interaction. Of course, I'm not doing them. So we're relying on case studies. Usually, if there is a little bit of content, I would do open up to a recorded session, and I would send them the link to view it whenever it's convenient for them. So I would just, and my lectures will never exceed like 30 minutes. The recording, I don't want it to be too long, so the chances of them watching it will be slim to none. So this is what I do. Also with some case studies, it's like more than one submission and a very complicated one, so on and so forth. So I would do open up to recorded session to explain to them what is exactly is expected. So I would not end up receiving like 27 emails and replying to answering the same question over and over again. So this is what
these are individual case studies they submit as an assignment. They don't work in groups.
Yes. So this is for the case studies. Now for the assessment part, because we initially had a midterm, a final exam, and a project. So we decided, or like Hedi, actually he gave us.
Can we go back to the assessments? We're going to do another round about assessments.
Okay.
So
all right.
Yeah, I'll move to Wafi about what he does in class.
Okay.
And then after Matthew finishes, you want to say something else about the class?
This is for the case studies also. Although with some case studies I do the Panapto session, but also I end up getting a lot of questions and emails, and some of the emails are exactly the same from different people. So again, I do like an office hour Zoom meeting where I'm available so they can come on and ask me whatever questions they have.
Okay, thank you, Olivia.
You're welcome.
All right, Wafi.
Okay, I actually have similar experiences to all of you. I started with Panopto and it didn't work out well for many reasons. I actually went to the university. I go to university 4 days a week to record my videos, my Panopto videos. And I discovered that at some point that Zoom would be better. Let me just quickly, you can see the action. And for some reason, I think I want this thing to, okay, so okay. Well, yeah, for some reason, actually, the screen is, zoomed in. I don't know how to fix that, but, just like.
You want to, maybe because you're not the host. Maybe when you're the host, you have.
Right, but it's okay, that's okay. So you can actually see here, okay,
yes.
So, I mean, usually, actually, I use two chairs on top of each other. You probably can see that here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here I put the chairs on top of each other. It's, okay, I can see that. Okay, and then I work on the board. Let me just quickly share with you. Let's see. Okay, so I cannot share the screen with.
I can give you access to share the screen. Hang on.
It's okay. It's okay. I would just like to show you like a piece of a video, to see the quality of the.
Yeah, but I think that's good. I'll allow you to share screen.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna make you co-host, which should allow you to share the screen. All right, try now, Yofi.
Okay, so here, for example. Okay, so here you can see. So that's
very nice.
Okay, and actually, that's a Zoom meeting, so they do attend, and I actually take attendance. I let them just say yes in the chat as total attendance. I actually sometimes do that twice, like at the beginning and at the end. You can see that I'm using the moving board, so I'm actually having like a little larger place to write down. The reason why I did that is that actually I tried to do the Zoom meetings at home, but it didn't work out well. I can share the screen on my laptop, but it's not as effective. I cannot really easily write equations or draw pictures. My handwriting on the iPad is not that nice. So the idea is that actually that I try to do the best possible lecture with participation of the students as much as possible. And some of the students actually take or make use of that. Some of the students actually do not attend, and they will just hopefully watch these lectures at home, probably just before the exam or whatever. There is another thing I actually am doing, is that actually I have WhatsApp groups for each of my sections, and I send them messages, announcements. I send them music. I like jokes.
I love that.
So just to let them feel that actually I'm, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm like a father or uncle or whatever, just joking with them. You know, actually they like it that much. You know, I don't usually joke during my lecture. I find myself actually joking a lot with the students on WhatsApp. I also have a discussion board on the Blackboard, where actually I invite them to ask questions on particular sections. So I have a forum and I have threads. You know, each thread is labeled by the section, so they can ask questions about the particular sections. I tell them they can answer these questions, so that actually I can watch them answering the questions, and sometimes I just comment on the answer, as well as like answer the questions by myself. So I think there's lots of communication between us. Of course, I also like announce things on Blackboard. I send them emails because not everyone is actually using WhatsApp. So like most of them are actually on WhatsApp. So I think that's it. Yeah. One thing about okay. So I'll talk about the assessment later on. Okay. That's it.
Okay. There's a couple of questions for you in the chat that are quite just like, how have your students been responding to just having several different platforms for communication? So you have like Blackboard and WhatsApp for students. You do it so the different students can find different things, right? Because some students won't want the informal WhatsApp thing.
Right, yeah, okay. I did the WhatsApp after feeling that they are not communicating very well on the discussion board. Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, most of the, if somebody asks me a question on WhatsApp, I tell them, sometimes I just take that questions and post it on the discussion board and tell them, go and look at my answer there. Sometimes I tell them, like, please ask that question on discussion board. That's actually a good question, very good question, but I will do that on discussion board. The reason I don't want to ask questions or answer questions on WhatsApp, because it would be hard for them to recover these.
Yes, that's the problem with WhatsApp, right? It can fill up, but it's not organized in any way. Yeah.
Right. However, it's actually a nice discussion. I'll actually talk more about that in the assessment.
Sure. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. That's good. And I do like the part where you're sharing like jokes and because we need to sort of make more of an effort to be human online. Otherwise you become like a robot or something. Okay, Matthew. Can we hear? Is he still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. You just changed location because someone left the session. Okay, go ahead, Matthew.
Thank you. So I just say that it's gone really well, this online time. I feel very fortunate. I teach a course, Business Communications, and that has been very relevant to what's happening. The entire business community and business world is going online and trying to figure out how to do business online. And so we've just contextualized our course in that context. We're going to figure out how to do all of this online as a kind of a real demonstration of what the whole business community is doing globally. They've really embraced that framing of the course. And so I've told them, I'm going to have you try new tools. We're going to push the limits. We're going to experiment with things. And we're going to contextualize this in the context that you're in the business world. And for your survival of your business, you need to figure out how to do this. And it's just gone really well. So we've gone on to do almost everything that we initially planned on doing. We are doing most of it synchronous in Zoom. But we've done discussion boards, we've done WhatsApp, we've done Padlet groups, we've done a variety of other things. But Zoom has been our main form of communication. Using the polling feature to do in-class quizzing for comprehension as well as group feedback. They're doing presentations to each other, group interactive presentations. So they're leading groups. We've done mock interviews, online interviews. we are doing chapter discussions. We're using the breakout rooms a lot for small group discussion. And then they're solving problems on whiteboards, other things, saving those whiteboards and then coming back and presenting to the class what they've done in their small groups. We've done peer editing because it's a communications group. So we're peer editing work and we're rotating people between breakout groups and reviewing multiple papers simultaneously, kind of sequentially. That's worked really well. And it's a CBL based course. So they're supposed to be doing community-based learning, and they've shifted all of their CBL work online also. So they're learning how to do community service in the realities of social distancing. So they're working with community partners to create awareness videos or other elements to help hygiene videos and other aspects. It just continues to go really well. And then after class, I always tell people, hey, I can stay around for the next 10 or 15 minutes before you start your next class. I'm here to just talk or chat if you'd like. And there's always a few students who hang around and just want to talk or discuss. And then I just try to make myself as available as I can. And we're using, of course, email, a lot of email. We're using Turnitin.
Where do you do the peer review? This is one of the questions I had on Peer House. Are they doing it on Google Docs? Are they putting it to peer review and Turnitin? What are they doing?
So what they do is I've done Turnitin, but we're using Google Docs. And then we actually do live peer editing. So when they get into their breakout room, everybody posts into the chat their link to their Google Doc. And then you click on the person you're editing, you review it, and then you give a few minutes of verbal feedback on the paper. You walk through and give your feedback, and then you switch the role. And what I do is I say, I want you looking at this aspect of your paper right now. This whole process takes 8 to 10 minutes, and then I pull everybody back together. I get 1 or 2 comments or 3 comments about what people thought about that aspect of the paper. I'll say, okay, next we're going to look for this. I want you to just look at organization of the paper. I want you to just look at the introduction. I want you to just look at this, and then I bring them back. But they read it live, and then they give the immediate verbal feedback on it. And they can also put notes on the paper in the Google Doc itself.
Is there anything else you want to add, Matthew? I sort of interrupted you there.
No, that's fine. I think it's just overall it's gone well. I think I framed it in the context of saying, look, I am going to ask you to use tools that you don't have experience with. And I'm going to, because if you're in a real business setting, if you were doing an internship or you had a job right now, and now the survival of your business or your job depends on you figuring this out, you need to figure it out. And they're embracing. I've not had a single complaint, and students are very comfortable sharing any frustrations with me, but I have not had a single complaint because I think they're rising to the challenge and realizing that this is not just what they as students are going through, this is what the entire world is going through. And I'll tell them that if you can put on your resume or CV in the future that you've used this tool and this tool and this tool and this tool, and you've used it to solve these problems and communicate in this way, that this is a huge advantage to them. And so I don't want them to look at themselves as, oh, look what we're having to go through. But one of the things I've said is this is going to be possibly their most valuable semester of education that they've ever had. Because unfortunately, all the other semesters are probably a lot like the others. It's, what's the difference between your 12th semester and your 13th semester? Just another, 5 classes. But this is going to be a semester unlike any other. And they have the greatest opportunity to learn more this semester than maybe any other semester they've had. And
maybe to become lifelong learners too. So
yeah, exactly. And it's a 3,000 level course.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. So now I think most of the questions that folks have asked in the chat have been answered. Does anyone have 1 or 2 quick questions before we move on to the assessment? Okay. So there was a question from Anpir earlier for Ahmed that she wants to know more about the negotiation exercise.
Sure.
Go ahead and just say in 2 minutes.
Sure. One of the topics that I have in my course is about requires some negotiation. So it's in brief, there are producers of a product who sell their products to retails, and there are wholesalers in the middle or intermediaries. And the case study says that there is a challenge whether they would go and sell by themselves to retailers and hire a sales team, or they would go to the wholesalers, and the wholesalers would take care of a large volume. So the case says that
she wants to know about the format rather than the content.
No. I understand. I understand. This is the context. So the bottom line is that there is a group that plays the role of the wholesaler and a group that plays the role of the producer. And the wholesaler would lose everything if they do not take the business, and the producer will lose a large volume of sales if they do not go to wholesalers. So both of them have vested interest. So I divide them into breakout rooms so that each group will have extra information from their CEO that the others would not know. And then there will be a window of price. So there will be a minimum price for a team and a maximum price for a team and a sweet spot in the middle. And I leave them to negotiate. So I give them some tools in that, and then they negotiate, and then they learn and come up with a price that they agree on, deal or no deal. And then after that, I explain to them what a sweet spot is and how can this work, and how this negotiation leads to understanding the whole concept and the whole dynamics and the decision-making in business. So this is the setup. So what I do is I do in face-to-face. I have not done it online, but I learned how to do it. I divide them into two groups. I talk to each one. I give them the information, and then I have about 6 teams. So each team I divide it into two to three students each, and then I take half of half of team 1 and half of team 2 and half of team 3 and so on. I give them the role play of group 1, and the other half I give them the role play of group 2, and then I ask each halves of the teams to negotiate together. So I have from each group 6 deals, and then I discuss the deals and see which one got the best deal and stuff like this. So it's separating them, giving them extra information, giving them tools to how to work with them, and then leave them to fight. And then after that, come back, they tell what their experience was, and then I reflect on it, and then I deduce from it what the learning is and why this negotiation is there and what it means to have a sweet spot in the negotiation. That's what I do.
Really nice example of experiential learning, like they experience it and then you tell them the theory behind it. Okay, Muna. So I'll move on to talking about assessments. And we have about 20 minutes. So even though this is really important, we have very little time. If you can stay slightly beyond 2 o'clock, I can stay like for 5-10 minutes more, but Muna's saying no. So I'll let Muna start and try to go really fast, not answer questions yet, and then we'll see if there's time for questions. Go ahead.
Okay. So before talking about assessment, I just want to point out that a couple of the comments that different people have said that I think really shouldn't be lost in this conversation is that it's not just about teaching and assessing, but also the human aspect of being together with these students in this time period. And I think we've heard a couple of examples of that already. And in the class that I teach, we do a coronavirus check-in at the beginning of every class, so that we have a discussion on what it's like. And then I called it that. I put it on the agenda, the coronavirus check-in. And you really see how people, how it's affecting them, and what's going on in their lives and things like that. And then I try to bring it into the course material, of course, because you want to draw it in. In terms of assessment, so the course that I teach is a very, very dense and difficult theories course at the graduate level, and it's theories of therapy. So it's an applied theory. It's not just a theory of how to look at people, but a theory of how to do something and how to, and what you do, what's the impact from it. Traditionally, in other universities, it's taught sort of like textbook with exams, often multiple choice. The only class in a graduate counseling program that could be taught with multiple choice exams. The good news is that a few years ago, I completely revamped the course and changed it to a different format from the norm, and the students agreed, and it's worked out great. And what I do is that I create a case study, and it's a very long, detailed case about a person as if it's somebody who's coming in for psychotherapy. And then it's the same case that's used throughout the entire course, and they have to take each theory and therapy model or treatment method and apply it to the same case. Of course, by the end of the course, they cannot stand this case and they don't like the name of the person. They have some kind of trauma towards him, but it really gets to the depth of what they're learning. So I think this is something that we might want to think about as we move forward, is that this is probably going to be more and more likely that we're going to end up having these kinds of crises where we need to teach online, and we might want to think about repackaging our courses so that it's applicable for that. However, we had one makeup class, which I recorded, as I mentioned, and I did not use Panopto or Zoom. I signed up for another, like I paid for another online video recording software, which makes it very easy to, like, again, draw on the video as I'm speaking, and and do all these fun things and cut it and remove parts and things like that to make it easier to record. But despite all of those efforts, after they watched the video, I found that their discussions on Blackboard were not very accurate. And then in class, I did sort of like an informal check-in, almost like an oral exam without telling them that's what it was, to see how they were doing. They still did not do very well. They were answering a lot of things incorrectly. So I ended up doing a Google form, like a quiz. And the nice thing about the Google form quizzes is that it's easy, it's to do, to set up, and then it's easy also to plug in the answers in the description. So they get something wrong, they can see the right answer right away, and a description for that. So I did that, not for grading, but again, that one lecture that was not done synchronously in class, I feel like I just cannot get them to really fully grasp the full information. It is very difficult material. So I did that Google form, and that was also, I didn't want to make like just plain multiple choice. It was all case studies, all examples and cases and discussions, and they had to apply the terms to it. And they're still not doing well on that one either. So I mean, I told them all, you just have to keep studying the material again, and then next class I have another set of cases which we'll do in the breakout rooms on Zoom, where they will have to apply the theory and the therapy techniques to the cases in groups. So each group will do it, and then the other groups will give feedback and sort of evaluate and sort of like a peer supervision process to help them gather that. So hopefully with all of these methods, they'll be ready to do the next paper that's based on this topic area.
Thanks, Mona. I think there might be like a cognitive load issue where everyone's functioning at half their brain, because I keep hearing the same thing, or similar to what Lubna was saying earlier about having to meet them to explain things because they didn't understand it from the video. Lubna, I know that you were doing a creative assessment, so could you share that one that Caroline has worked with you on?
Okay, so what I did is I said that initially we had a midterm, a final, and a like a final big project. So I decided that I'm not gonna do exams at all. So instead, I substituted the exams. So collectively, between the midterm and the final, they were 40%. So I needed to change the whole grade distribution. And I sent them the old distribution versus the new distribution, so they would know how the grade is being distributed now and where they need to spend and invest the majority of their time. So for the project, instead of it being 20% initially, now it's 30%. So they know that 30% of the entire grade goes towards this. So this is for the project. And I wanted also some sort of to like test that they really grasp the concepts. So I'm doing, and I'm gonna do it like probably in a couple of weeks or something, when everyone has been accustomed probably to Ramadan and they're not totally hibernating. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'm calling it an assessment. So it's not an exam, it's not a quiz, not that sort of thing. And I'm actually sending them like a PDF with the just questions. And I know a lot of the questions are based on analyses and criticism. So it's not like the kind of question that they can Google and get the answer. And I'm giving them 24 hours to complete that assessment. So, and I'm dedicating 10% for that assessment, just to test that they have grasped the knowledge and they acquired the necessary skills that they need to get from the course. As for the project, of course, thanks to the CLT team, especially Caroline and Marwa, they helped me and Dr. Hela so much creating that project, especially the rubric. So for the project, initially they were supposed to work in groups of 4 or 5. But because of the current situation, we reduced it to groups of 2, so they are going to be partners. So it would make the communication much more easier. Instead of just, also I didn't want them to work individually in it. I wanted some sort of a group or a person-to-person interaction. So we work, our course is mainly based on case studies. So for the project, they're actually creating their own case study. What they're doing is, and like we told them that the case study, I can share with you guys the document later on, if anyone wants to adapt it to their course. So they're not creating a case study where they're basically summarizing or doing some sort of a reinterpretation of peer-reviewed articles. No, they need to think of an original story, of a narrative. We've given them like a list of topics, and the topics are quite interesting. So it's like abortion, drug abuse, music therapy, you know, all the stuff like that, because my theme in scientific thinking is public health. So it's stuff like that that is interesting for them, and they can relate to it on their daily lives. So what they do is they pick one of the topics and they create an original storyline. So they create a narrative or something that is based on a real life experience. They create that story, and as they move on in the case study has to be done in sections. Each section, the story and that narrative is escalating. So they keep on exploring the story further and further. And within the story, within the narrative, they're integrating information and knowledge that they have gained from the peer-reviewed journal articles that they're going to use for their research. So they are basically not, so they wouldn't, we made sure to do that so they would not end up summarizing peer-reviewed journal articles. They would know how to integrate that knowledge into an original story. And for each of the sections, they're creating questions for the case study, and they're providing the answers to the questions as well. And I provided them with the course learning outcomes. So they would pick the learning outcomes or the objectives that would meet, the case study would meet those objectives. And in order to probably encourage and motivate them, we told them that the best case studies are actually going to be taught in next semester or something.
That's so cool. I love assignments or assessments where this is going to be reused, you know, recyclable.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I just want to ask Wafi, Ahmed, and Matthew, if one of them needs to leave at 2 o'clock, maybe I can get them to go first, but nobody has answered. Okay, so Ahmed has said he can stay a few minutes, so I'll manage to leave you to the end. I assume Wafi doesn't teach on Wednesdays, which is why I chose.
I do. I have a lecture in 10 minutes.
Oh. Go ahead. You go. All right.
Okay. Okay. So we actually had, you know, our a good part of our assessment, about maybe 20% or more, based on assignments that they do online, and well, basically that, you know, that remained and actually was used even during the break. I give them a little bit of time to just relax after the shock of, you know, the break and the coronavirus. But then I told them, you know, I mean, you have a homework assignments coming, and so you have to you know, make sure that you study for, you know, like for each assignment. And so that was part that actually has not changed. The only part, of course, that changed is the exam, or the 2 exams, the second midterm and the final. And our second midterm actually was delayed till next week. And we decided that we will give our second exam on the blackboard. So I will put the exam on the blackboard. I put actually each problem on the blackboard and scramble them. Like, you know, they will actually, each student will have a different sequence from the other. And I use also respondents monitor. You know, it was a very big fight with the students to force that on them. I told them I mean, if you feel that there's any problem with the Respondents Monitor, you can always opt out and take an oral exam. And in fact, even if they don't, even if they do take the Respondents Monitor exam, there will be, I will have the right to actually ask them a few questions, like maybe 2 or 3 minutes questions on a Zoom meeting. So that actually that would be like a short oral exam. So either they will have the Respondents Monitor exam with a short oral exam, or not having the online exam and meeting me online for about half an hour or more, and I will ask them questions and I will assess their level of expertise or mastery of the subject, and hopefully I will actually do that on the same level of the exam itself. Also, we actually have worksheets that they used to actually submit during the lectures, but then they cannot resubmit that. Well, I actually thought about letting them work out the worksheet at home and just send it to us, but then I decided that that worksheet will also be done online. But the only difference between that and the homework is that the worksheet will have only 1 hour, so it's almost like a quiz that will last for an hour, and it will have like 2 or 3 questions that they have to do within that hour. Well, I always fear that some of them will cheat during the quizzes and during the exams. I somehow almost sure that some of them do cheat during the quizzes. In other words, they look up the answer, they just look at the problem and they just like type the problem number, and then they will get the answer and they will put it online. So they do that in the worksheet. Well, the worksheet has only 5%, so that's no big deal. But in the exam, I don't want this to happen. I don't want people to actually have any access to any external agent, like a private tutor that actually can help them out during the exam. And I'm sure that they will do that. Our courses are usually considered to be hard courses for some students. I mean, they're not extremely hard, but they're challenging courses. And some of the students actually struggle to pass. I'm talking about Calculus 3 and Calculus 4. And so I don't want to give easy life for those students actually who are going to cheat. And that's why I was trying hard to prevent cheating from happening. Well, I hope that actually that I will do that. And the students actually, I had a long discussion on WhatsApp yesterday. It's like almost a 1 hour discussion on WhatsApp, just like messages here bouncing back and forth. And I actually told them, this is my point of view, and I really try to prevent cheating, and I'm trying to be fair to everyone. Those who actually do not cheat will definitely feel bad if they know that somebody else cheated and got better marks. So that basically that's a summary of what I'm doing.
Thank you, Wafi. Thanks for sharing that, and like the negotiation process and the ability to, my daughter's saying hi, and the ability to opt out, I think is really important, and giving them different options. I thought that was very interesting as well, and how the different students are going to feel about it. Okay, I know you have to go to class, so thank you so much for joining us. And then Ahmed, and then Matthew, I'd like to hear from you as well.
All right.
I'll stay for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll try to be as brief as possible. I did 3 exams so far, so I just want to tell you, maybe I had the most out of the number of in terms of number of exams. So I did a couple of things. First of all, there is one course where I had 4 exams, small ones, because the topics require some time, and I decided to, based on students' feedback, to reduce them to 3. And 3 are short exams, but at least they felt that some pressure has been taken out of them, so that's something aside. My strategy for the exams are open book. The good news is that I always give open book exams, so I don't have a problem with proctoring. So what I did is I created multiple versions of each exam. Of course, the case studies were almost the same, but I made some changes in the conclusions, but the level of difficulty would be almost the same. So I divided the students and put them on email. I put them on a BCC, and I created the emails early by renaming the attachment so that nobody would know that this is their version. The exam, of course, is tight. So if I give it for 1 hour, 15 minutes, or 1 hour and a half, it usually takes that time. And at the end, I can give them 5 to 10 minutes to complete it. So it's very difficult for them to consult with others. I also, the students who are in the same group, I made sure that each one has a different version. That's why I selected 6 versions, because that's the maximum number of students in a group. I asked them to upload their exams on Blackboard after scanning. So I gave them instructions to scan it in a PDF in one file, and they uploaded on Blackboard, so I was tracking. I asked them to join Zoom, but without video, so I was not proctoring. But I asked them to join. I sent the emails 3 minutes before the time, and I asked them to raise their hands so that once they received the exam and opened it, it's fine. So they do it. It takes a minute or two, and we started exactly on time, all exams, which was great. I also asked them to raise hands when they have questions, so that they don't disturb others. And then I contact them in private chat to answer the questions during the exam. So that was an advantage for having them on Zoom. Some of them leave Zoom, so I got their phone numbers, and whoever got disconnected, I made sure that myself or the assistant contact them so that they have any problem, or if a question has been asked and shared by everybody, that everybody got the answer. I also want to make sure if something problematic happened so that I can take that into consideration in the timing. So that's the bottom line of it. Of course, the collection of the exams was a little bit hard, but it happened well. I needed the assistants to help. My last thing I want to share with you about assessments is the projects. I fear after the credit fail process that some students would say that let me go for a credit and let me not work on the project because we'll get the grade anyway. So I use very seriously the peer evaluation forms to make sure that the participation grade is affected by that. So I thought that this would be a good tool to try to grab the students to work well till the end of the semester. So that's a summary of what I do.
Thank you, Ahmed. Matthew, do you want to
go? Sure, thank you. My course, we do not have any exams in the course. They just do a lot of writing, so it's report writing, proposal writing, responding to complex emails. They do presentations, they do mock interviews. So everything is, there's no exams, but there's a lot of assessment. So every week we're assessing something, they're turning in something. And so they submit writing on Turnitin, and I do give feedback on Turnitin. Turnitin has a variety of tools you can give, from comments to remarks to voice messages, and I use all of them. You can also do peer feedback on Turnitin. I use that sometimes. When we do presentations, or today we did some mock interviews, the rest of the class is typing in comments and feedback. And then so peer evaluation, I create peer evaluation forms. They give the peer evaluation and they submit that to me. I collate it all together as part of the evaluation process and give them the feedback of the entire class in addition to mine. And I'm trying to read my notes here. So we do a lot of this, but particularly it's just paper-based. They're doing a lot of papers, proposals, and these are graded. Often they're graded from my home anyhow. And so I think as we have them submit papers, it's not much more difficult to assess than it was otherwise. I always give rubrics, and I'll often ask them to evaluate their own papers using the rubrics before they submit them. But I do that online. I mean, I do that face-to-face also, and students find that helpful. So fortunately, in my case, it has not been difficult for assessment because the assessment I already did transitions online very easily.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to now open the floor. There's not that many people who are listening in, so I don't think we need to raise hands. I think if someone wants to speak, they can unmute and ask questions they want. I know there's some stuff that's been going on in the chat, so I think that's already been addressed and answered.
I just have one question to Mona and Ahmed. I want to actually ask about what is the breakout rooms?
That's a feature in Zoom that you have to turn on. And it
Okay.
allows you to make students work in groups like you would do in a class where they would work in
Okay.
separate groups. And then you can jump between them and see what they're doing.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
It's a
All
really
right.
cool, if you see the Zoom guidelines that CLT did, it has a link
Mhm.
to the process. And then if you just follow the guidelines, you'll figure out.
Yeah.
It's
You
really,
have to
really
go.
fun.
You have to go to settings and change your settings so that the breakout room becomes one of the options in the menu down next to share, chat, record, and so on.
Oh. Okay,
So
I see.
it's not
All
going to
right,
appear
okay.
to you unless, yeah.
And you can also add one about polling, because I think polling is really very, very nice.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I want to hear your thoughts, because I heard that some of you are on the WhatsApp group. I was at the beginning of this whole process, I was actually thinking about that, but then I got a little bit worried of having my number with the students. So how do you guys feel about that?
I think different faculty are different from each other, and different groups of students feel differently about faculty. So some students don't want their faculty with them, depending on the kind of relationship they have. But I'll see what other people say about it. I know Mona had to go, but I don't know what Ahmed's doing. I know Matthew is with them on WhatsApp.
Well, I joined their WhatsApp group lately. I don't know how they are feeling about it, but I didn't feel that they were upset about it. And I listened to what they talk and the concerns they have. But I'm fine with giving the number. I did not want to do that while it was face to face, but now I think it's urgent to get the numbers, to get close, and to solve any urgent problem quickly before it gets worse. So for me, I'm not saying that it's a great thing, but I think if you are comfortable and they are comfortable, why not?
Okay. Okay. I think it makes the communication a little bit easier instead of just checking my email or having a Zoom session, so on and so forth. I was actually really thinking about it, but I don't know, I'm just back and forth.
I mean, I use Slack with my students, but I've been using it for several semesters anyway. And Slack allows this sort of semi-synchronous, semi-formal conversation, but you don't have to share anybody's number. And they have an app that notifies them, and you can do private and public conversations, and you can do small groups. So my students are working in groups, so we create a group for the pairs and me to discuss their project, and you can have a channel for assignment questions, a channel for exam questions, but it feels like WhatsApp.
Okay.
But it's more organized and it's more formal and it's outside their WhatsApp. So my students are happy with it. And they're saying, so Matthew, do you want to say anything about this?
No, I think I agree with what you guys have said. And I would have said the same thing.
So I don't think anybody should feel bad for not wanting to be part of the students' WhatsApp. And especially, you decide the line you want to put, and then what kind of information overload is too much for you as well. I think one of the key things is that sometimes to understand that maybe they'll talk through something together and you don't need to answer. I think if you think about it as not a classroom space, but like an informal space where maybe they will figure it out before you even get there. Matthew, you want to say something?
Yeah, I would just say that on the first day of class, I've always given students my WhatsApp number, and I've done that for years. And what I have found is that it varies significantly from my personal experience from class to class, how much they interact with me. Some students interact a lot, and some students don't interact. I mean, some classes, whole classes just don't interact a lot. But me personally, I've never had bad experience. I've never felt that it's been abused or excessively used. And more often than not, I find it advantageous, and that I can quickly communicate with students. The benefits I gain, I found have been much greater than any loss that I've felt, which has been very minimal, if any.
Yeah, and I would like to add also that the WhatsApp group for the class is not a group that I expect too many chats coming in as compared to group projects and group friends. So I've not seen information overload as much as I expected, unless there is a poll or they want everybody to agree about changing something. Apart from that, I don't think that it's that incredible. They already have their WhatsApp groups for their projects, and they use it more.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody else have questions or comments? Just unmute and start asking.
Maha, I'm going to send you the project that I talked about, and you can share it with whoever is interested in case anyone would like to adapt it to their own course.
Thank you. I love the kinds of topics you're letting me do.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of the one that you're doing where it's about germophobia, is that with my class projects, I've given students the option to create a project that relates to something related to COVID-19 or the option to do something completely different. And half of them really didn't want to talk about
I already
COVID-19.
gave them an assignment on COVID-19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Ampina, I love how you've got your hair up.
Yeah,
It's very cute.
it's getting longer. Hey, I was wondering if you guys sounds doing that you're doing great. So do you have any ideas for Ramadan? How you're gonna deal with this? Because like I have a class, for instance, at 5, and I think it's gonna be at 9. I don't feel like I can do anything at 9 p.m. Personally, I can't because I'm getting up early, so I cannot think anymore, and that's 5,000. So we do Zoom and we discuss and all of this. So you know, and I know I have some that are not Muslim in the class, so they are not gonna do the Ramadan, so they may also be affected. So I don't know how to deal with this. And also, are you gonna change the way you are doing your class because of that? Not only the hours, but the content, I guess.
I actually have an answer, but nobody else has answered. I was giving everyone else a chance. Go ahead, Ahmed.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'll be able to answer that question well because it's really hard to manage Ramadan in general. I will answer the second half, which is the content. I don't change my content at all. I think Ramadan and non-Ramadan, summer and fall and spring, they should be the same. So it's maybe you do an effort to adapt to the timing, but the content should not change. That's my opinion. In terms of timing, the provost has announced that it would be better to stick to the timing. But if the class is small and you can find a way to change or go for a time like a 5 or a 4 or whatever that would not conflict with somebody else, maybe you can try it with the students. But with a large number of students, you better stick to the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with a graduate course, they don't take more than 2 or 3 in a semester, so it might be a little bit easier, right? They don't have only that one class that day. But they're adults, so if they're working, they might not be able to.
Well, it's a mix of undergrad and grad students.
Ah,
so,
that's
but
very
they're only
tricky.
10, so it's
I
only
think poll
10.
them.
So maybe, sorry?
So there's 2 things that I have in mind for this. One of them is poll them. Ask them if there's another time of day that might work for you and them both. The other thing is what I'm doing with my class. My class is at 10 o'clock, so it would be 9:30 in Ramadan, and that's actually early for a lot of people in Ramadan, to be honest. So what I've done for that class is I've given students 2 options. They can either come to a Zoom session and do X, or if they can't make it to the Zoom session for whatever reason, they don't have to tell me ahead of time. But if they don't make it to the Zoom session, they have to do Y. And I just want to make sure that they've met the learning outcome. So I assign a reading or a video or something, and then they have to either come to class and discuss it or do their own reflection with some guidelines on how to do it. And that would be, and they're free any class to choose whichever they want to do. And I'm sure some people don't want to write and they'll come to class and they'll wake up early because they don't want to sit and write stuff, which is fine by me.
Yeah, and I would like to add also one of the things that is not very nice to anybody, but sometimes during this COVID-19 problems may be good is weekends. So moving something to a Saturday, I mean, everybody's at home. So if you poll the students and you find that this may be useful, that this compensates for another class or something like this, maybe it would be better and it would be during the day. But again, it needs some effort from your side to find consensus.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if everybody's done for today, if you don't have any more questions, but obviously I think you could always email each other and ask questions. I'm sure nobody would mind. We're all online all the time anyway. Lubna, did you want to say something?
No, that's fine.
All right, thank you all so much. I think this was a good variety of people with all of you caring for your students, but in different ways and showing it in different ways. And I think I've learned a lot by watching your thought process. So thank you for also making your thought process transparent, which is not just the successful outcome, but how you reached it and how you changed your mind a little bit about things. I think this video is one of the videos that I think I will share publicly on CLT websites, Yehuda, because I think it's going to be useful to a lot of people, and even other people around the world, even not just the UC. So if the speakers are okay with that, let me know if you're not okay with that. Otherwise, I'll assume you're okay with that. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maha.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'll
Thank
stop
you, Maha.
recording.
Thank you. Please
Thank
keep in
you.
touch. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.